Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 28th episode of the Inbox, and today we're starting off with a question from Alejo Ruiz Kamauer, saying, what do you think about making a laser that could be used in Quantum Drive as a way of pulling them out of it by destroying the ship engine? Also, how do you feel about being able to remove a component from your ship, like a missile bay on a Saber, for example, and mounting an interdiction pulse generator that would work as in the Avenger Warlock, big bubble boom ship type of deal? So, to answer the first part of the question, I think it depends on what direction CIG wants to go with the interdiction, quantum preventing types of devices. If it ends up being something like a bubble or a net that's cast, I don't think you're going to also see something that pulls people out. I think we're probably going to see either prevention of going to quantum, or we're going to see pulling people out of quantum. And how they end up doing that's going to be dependent. If they go the pulling route, we talked about this before, it could end up being like a weapon that you end up using, or it could end up being like a mine that's placed along the point of travel, so when a ship pulls through it, they end up hitting that gravity well that pulls them out. We don't really know what direction they're going to go. Part of me kind of likes it both ways. I like the idea of the intuitive gameplay of preventing people, because then all of a sudden there's forethought that's brought into it. But at the same time, engaging people that are currently in Quantum Drive is an interesting aspect as well. The problem is, I'm not sure you're ever going to be able to catch up to somebody that's in Quantum Drive. So unless you guys hit it at the same time, or you're able to hit them on a perpendicular angle and knock them out, I'm not sure how effective that's going to really be. So my gut says that based on the type of gameplay we've got, especially since right now you can't control the speed that you quantum, I'm going to have to guess that it's probably a prevention type of deal, and we're not going to see that type of laser weapon that can pull people out. We're probably in more of a prevention standpoint, or we're going to be using like mines that'll pull people that just happen to go through that area. As far as actually being able to mount something like on a Saber, I think we're going to see that flexibility in the game. It just depends on the size constraints. It's a relatively flat platform that tucks up into the Saber to keep it, hidden and keep the radar signature low. So if you have some device that's low and capable of fitting there, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to do that, assuming the components are all compatible with the pipes that are in place. So possibility, but I'm not real positive on what direction they're going to go with that. Utubdar says, Sir, what is the Star Citizen way of setting up combo moves? Is it going to be a voice attack or XML script, etc.? For instance, if I get interdicted and I want to execute a 3-command maneuver called Evasive Maneuver Delta, which immediately searches for the largest object that is not an enemy attacker, head to that object at top speed and go power down. How would I go about setting something up like that? So things like voice attack allow you to do some macro type of deals. A good example would be when I was using voice attack, and I probably need to get back into using it again now. I had something that I called evade, where I knew if somebody was flying straight at me in a jousting type of dogfight, I could say evade. It would decouple, shoot my ship up and to the right just a little bit, and then recouple, basically helping me to get out of the way of combat. I didn't use it very often because I could do it with the controls that I had in place, but that type of maneuver was there. Now, what you're talking about is something a little bit more complicated, because you're not only using your ship's controls, but you're also using the sensors to identify different locations and fly to those. Especially since you're talking about things that you can't currently scan for. Like, our sensors are picking up other ships and objects. They're not picking up things like asteroids. So you're not going to necessarily say, build a command that says Maneuver Delta that's going to find that for you, because you can't do that in the game today. It may end up being something. I don't think it's necessarily something that CIG is going to build in, unless you can actually use like program and overclock components to let you do longer commands like that. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be as advanced as you're kind of talking about in your comment. Sean Whetstone says, STLYoungblood, not much of a question, but I want to know your thoughts on this. I noticed that larger ships have docking collars, but mid to low size ones don't. I mean, ships like the Vanguard or the Avengers. This makes me a little bit worried for things like pirating or even moving from ship to ship easily. Don't know if this is something that's going to be fixed, but I think it's something that would ruin fleets in long-distance travel. So, not every ship is going to have the docking collar. So I wouldn't expect for that design to be added in later. When we got the Q&A regarding the Buccaneer and talking about the ejection seats and how there's not a docking collar, but it's designed for piracy, it's the combat version of it, and there's no intentions from CIG to add that in. So I think we can kind of extrapolate that to other ships and say we're not going to expect to see docking collars on all the ships, because there's not necessarily a real purpose for it. So something like a Vanguard, for example, is a ship that's designed to be a long-range attack craft. It's supposed to spearhead your ship. It's basically, or your fleet. It's basically a combat vessel. And based on the purpose of the ship, there's not really the intentions there designed for you to actually want to dock with somebody else. Now, the Avenger is an interesting one. It could potentially have a miss here because we're talking about a ship that was originally designed as kind of a bounty hunter type police ship. And you have to assume that's going to, at least at some times, involve you getting into enemy ships. So I don't think we're going to see a change to that, just because it would be a pretty major overhaul on a ship that seems to be fairly done for now. So I think we're going to have to consider other ways of doing things. And that's part of why you see the armament on the Avenger that you do. You can disable enemy ships using the sucker punches. So if you're able to disable the enemy ship and then you actually are able to just EVA and board that way, it's less of a problem. So I don't think you can expect to see it on a lot of things. It's going to be more about communicating with another ship if you want to board, or finding sneaky ways of actually getting it done. There are some other things that people have brought up, like inconsistent docking sizes. So like I think somebody was saying the Constellation docking collar size is different from that on the Aurora. So I think that's probably something that we'll end up seeing adjusted so there's compatibility, especially within brands. If you're talking RSI to RSI, you would expect those components to really communicate. I haven't done any measuring or know if that's actually the case or not. But I would assume that the changes we will see are going to be about making things universal, not necessarily going back and changing core design decisions about ships. Carjo says, is there a more precise estimated release date other than late 2016? I think late 2016, well, the short answer is no. But I think late 2016 or quarter 4 is probably a good estimate for when we're going to see Squadron 42. We know that they're doing a lot of development on it. We see the mocap work. We see some of the teasers that are coming out. And I think they're trying to really find a deadline and get it out within 2016. As far as final release for the Persistent Universe, I think we're looking at 2017 with ongoing development. Now, the tricky thing is, what are we actually going to call release? Because, we're in alpha right now, and it's going to continue to expand. And then we're going to get beta, and it's going to continue to expand. And then we're going to get the full version. It really depends on when you decide this is going to be considered the release date. So, my gut says probably end of 2017 for the Persistent Universe is when we're going to get closer to an official release, as I do air quotes. But it's hard to really say because we don't get updated timelines from CIG all that often. But late 2016 is probably realistic for Squadron 42. MBI 1974 says, I'm thinking about getting a Titan or a Stalker. Are they the same when it comes to weapons? The ships themselves are the hull is basically the same, but they've got differences internally. So the Titan, for example, has just the cargo capabilities. It's an open back. You can carry more goods. The Stalker's coming with the holding cell, so you can hold prisoners. You're going to probably be able to end up kind of configuring it how you like. As far as the weapons are concerned, the Titan, I believe, right now comes with the same nose gun, but 2 Badgers or Bulldogs on the wings, which is a laser repeater, where the Stalker actually comes with the sucker punches, which are the distortion cannons for helping to disable your ship. So basically, if you think about it, the Titan's for cargo, you want weapons to help you protect it. The Stalker's for bounty hunting or police work, it's got weapons to help disable and catch enemy craft. Now, you can swap them out however you like, or if you don't want either of those, you can end up buying a weapon and putting it on there as long as it fits the spot. But as far as what they come stock with, they are just a little bit different. Emil Sherzhavin says, what do you think about Star Citizen optimization? I'm having FPS problems with an AMD R9 290, 4GB, and an FX 8320 OC plus 8GB of RAM. Is the game better with NVIDIA and Intel? I don't really know, and the reason I'm saying this is because I'm on an Intel rig within NVIDIA. So I'm currently running a 980 Ti with a 3570K that's overclocked to about 4.2 or 4.5 depending on my mood. But my game runs relatively well. That being said, like I mentioned in a previous video, the performance varies drastically depending on the release that we're in and how many people that we currently have in the game or in the server. And that's one of the biggest challenges that they need to work out because that performance changes so much. So it's hard to really say, are you having better performance than I am or am I having better performance than you are? Because I think it kind of changes and varies. That being said, I will say that I think for my own experience, back when I ran an AMD rig, and just from talking with a bunch, the 1,000 people or so that we've got in the organization, people with Intel generally get better gaming experiences, and a lot of that comes down to single core performance. There's processors out there for AMD that do eight cores, which is great in theory, but the problem with games today is they don't really take advantage of multi-threaded or hyper-threading. So even when you talk about i7s, what you really want to look for, at least from my limited understanding, is that single core speed, and because that's where you really get the benefit, and that's why you see so much benefit from things like overclocking. As far as the AMD versus Intel thing, I'm never going to claim to be a hardware expert. I'm proficient, but I'm not outstanding. I'm not up to date with every release, and I kind of try and stay away from it just because it's such a polarizing topic. So I would suggest getting onto the hardware section of the RSI forums, compare what you've got compared to what others have, and they can kind of share their experiences with you. Einar Johansson says, hey, been watching for a while and really enjoy the info and effort from you. Thank you. What are your thoughts on different fuel types in the game? Do you believe some fuels will be better than others or just going to be one type? He's a Starfarer mechanic. Keep up the good work. So with the fuel, we know there's going to be different types of fuel, but it's going to be more like normal fuel and quantum fuel. And that's going to be used for jumping. And I think we may see things like racing fuel. So there's probably going to be different types that is essentially going to be a different mixture of things like hydrogen that is probably going to help. Now, what we know from like a Starfarer perspective is there's going to be certain planets that you can scoop off of that actually are more pure. So if we can take that and make any assumptions, we can say that a more pure planet is going to be easier for you as a Starfarer mechanic because you're not going to have to do as much refining. How that ends up translating into the game, I don't know if we're going to see like we see today, at least in the United States, with regular, medium, and premium, different types of gasoline. But we do know that there's going to be a difference between the like quantum fuel, the jump fuel, that kind of stuff. So if any of you have seen anything more recent, please chime in there because I haven't seen anything mentioned about fuel in a long time. With the Starfarer being in the game, though, I think we're going to start seeing those refueling mechanics happening pretty soon, and I think that's going to really start some of these discussions as we move forward. And the last question for this video is going to be from Nefix. He wants to know, do you think we will be able to kind of launch a capsule full of a boarding party for pirating and other things so you don't have to EVA and float to their ship? I think we can assume that larger ships are going to have the capability of launching something like that, like a boarding craft. We've seen some concept art that I reviewed a long time ago, and it looked to me to be a Vanduul boarding craft. Now, we also know that there's going to be the Teverin ship that's coming in that's specifically designed for boarding. So there's going to be ships, but I don't necessarily know how much is going to be like a Cutlass can release a boarding pod that can end up getting on board, or a Constellation. I think a lot of it is going to be EVA. Most of it's going to be picking a ship that's capable of docking with another ship. So if a Constellation is your target, a Cutlass is a really good option because you've got the docking collar that you can just jump out of. So I think that's more of what you're going to see. It's either going to be a dedicated ship or it's going to be utilizing what you already have on your ship, not necessarily a third-party component unless you're talking about something like a Bengal launching a craft, or a Kingship launching a little craft or something like that. So I haven't seen any more updates on that, but those are kind of the assumptions that I would make talking about that topic in particular. So that's going to be it for this video. If you guys have questions, get them in the comments. I'm starting to get caught up on them. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and take care.